Welcome to Insured Investors, where we share practical real estate investing tips with an insurance twist. I'm your host, Brooke Beats. Let's get started. Insurance is a vital component for any business, and having the proper insurance coverage can make a big difference when a loss occurs. We have Scott Kroening here with us today to share why investors shouldn't insure their properties under their homeowners policies and what they should consider instead. Scott spent the first 7 years of his career as a probation officer. He realized he was never going to be happy in law enforcement, so he set off to find a new career where he could still help people, and that's when he found insurance. His first role was at the catastrophe claims representative with Farmers Insurance. There, over the course of 24 years, Scott worked his way up through many different roles and promotions. Last year, Scott decided to join the INREG team and now serves as the INREG Program Managing Director. Scott and his wife invest in renovation properties, doing most of the cosmetic work themselves. Welcome to Insured Investors.
Well, thanks, Brooke. Thanks for having me.
Yes.
Looking forward to it.
All right, so let's get started.
All right.
This can sometimes be a tricky conversation, homeowners versus commercial. So let's just dive in and let people know why.
Yeah.
Why do people insure their properties under a homeowner's policy?
Well, first of all, yeah, I mean, just insurance in general is kind of tricky. I mean, it's not something that is just common sense, so, I mean, I would say there's a few reasons. Lack of experience, lack of knowledge. Again, it's not just common knowledge for most people how an insurance policy reads. So, if you're a newer investor, or if you haven't spoken with your agent, or you're not familiar with the policy, and you're not comfortable with where the coverages are, the limits, et cetera, the problem is you don't have a good clarity around which direction you could go, or you may not even know that there's a difference. So just flat lack of experience is the thing that I would point out first. Second of all, I'd say, just from a human path of least resistance perspective, it's just quicker and easier. Most people, if they do have knowledge of their homeowner's policy, they might make an assumption, well, it's just the same. I'll just add my rental property to the same kind of a thing. So it would be quicker and easier because that's what you're familiar with. You might think it's the same. You would be wrong, but you might think that. And then the next thing is cost. I mean, most of us are very cost conscious. We want to save as much money as possible, and I get that, but if you're paying for something that will literally not potentially be covered in the future, what's the point of paying for it at all? So those are the things that kind of jump out to me as being the reasons behind that. Okay.
So what about a specific investment property? Why should those not be covered under a homeowner's policy?
So you got to kind of ask yourself, at least as in my opinion, what are the policies designed to do or designed to cover? So on the homeowner side, you're thinking through things like my personal property, I'm occupying my home as a homeowner. On the commercial side, it's a little different. You're thinking through, tenants and your personal property may not even be at that place. Liability differences can be huge. Additional risks, let's just make up an example, someone has a party at their rental, a big party at their rental house, and that renter probably doesn't care quite as much about their rental property as you would about your personal home. So carriers know that. They know that it's a higher risk. So there's a lot of differences like that. And like I said earlier, that leads to different costs because additional risk equals additional premium. But really it comes down to just being aware of the differences, being aware of the coverages. And if you don't know that naturally, you got to, reach out to the people who do. Spend the time that it takes to dig into that and to know what you're purchasing and know what you're covered for. There's a couple other things too, just coverages in general are going to be different. There's limit gaps as well. You want to make sure whatever you're getting on your policy is enough. You want to make sure that those specific a la carte items, that you personally need for your rental property, that it exists. I mean, you think through things like flood or earth movement, just things like that. And from INREG, you can actually purchase those things on an a la carte basis. So
okay,
yeah.
So are there any additional coverage or limit gaps that people should consider when putting their investment properties into a commercial or homeowners policy?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we could have a whole entire additional podcast on just this topic, but just a couple that kind of come to mind, like from the example like limit gaps. On the homeowner side, speaking specifically to like liability, you're looking at probably $300, $500K on your home. And again, speaking to the risks, the additional risks on the investment property side, you need more than that. You just flat do. And I personally would never advise a client to have those limits that low. And again, in our business at INREG, we start at $1 million, and you can go from there, and it's worth
liability claims can get pretty pricey
for sure. Yeah. And you also think about like not just the cost of you have to also think through like defending yourself on the legal side. So again, that $1 million at a minimum takes all that into account. And then the other thing that kind of jumps out to my mind is exclusions. One specific blanket exclusion on the homeowner side it's called the total pollution exclusion, and it literally excludes anything carbon monoxide related. Now, in our policies that we provide, it is a commercial policy, and you can, I don't know, there's situations where we can afford coverage for that, where you cannot even, it's just flat, just, what's the word I'm looking for, excluded.
Yeah.
It's just excluded. So,
well, that's a good one to have.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
So, moving into that realm then of things being denied and not denied, let's talk about claims. How could claims be impacted if you are covered under the wrong policy?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think the main thing you need to think through is just you're not going to be able to be paid on a claim if it's insured incorrectly. There are also the way the claim is paid out. Like, if you think through like your personal assets and your business assets, it's generally accepted that you want to keep those expenses in separate buckets, because if you are going to be sued for some reason, you want to have those assets tied up in different naming conventions. On the homeowner side, if you have a claim, it's more than likely, not always, but more than likely you're going to be paid out to your person. How you listed as a name insured on my personal house is going to be my name and my wife's name. On the commercial side, generally speaking, you might have it listed as your LLC or whatever you need to do that as your business requires. And you can keep those expenses separate. You can keep those claim checks separate as they happen. But I mean, that's important. But first and foremost to me is just you risk not being covered at all.
Yeah. So what should you do if you plan to turn your rental or your current residence into a rental?
Like I've kind of been saying, I mean, first and foremost, be educated on what this change means for you. It could be a rental, it could be any status change. So think through the stuff I've already said about kind of the different risks involved. There's a thing called material misrepresentation. It's almost a form of a fraud. You could think of it that way. I think a lot of people don't even realize when they're making this mistake. I'm actually one of them. I'll tell you about an example here in a second. But if you have, let's say you insure your rental property on a homeowner's policy, it could be a situation like, say, a fire takes place and your adjuster comes out there and he realizes, hey, your tenant caused this damage. And then he's thinking, wait,
Whoopsie.
this is set up on a homeowner's policy. This isn't right. And if you see that situation as an adjuster, it could literally
coverage denied.
Exactly. And that's first and foremost what we want to, avoid at all costs. So I'll give you an example. I'm throwing myself under the bus here. Back in probably 2005, 6, I built a house, right? Brand new, ground up. Fast forward a couple years, boom, 2008 happens. The market tanks. I'm in a personal situation where I really need to get out of this house. And I can't sell it. It's on the market for a while. I come to the conclusion that I'm going to have to rent this out because I don't want to short sell it, right? So find a renter. First time I've ever done this, and I just never called my agent. And I'm in the industry, how I should know these things, But it just goes to show you that if I'm literally in this industry and I didn't think about it, it probably happens a lot, and it's scary,
So let's say I own a home and I decide to start renting it out. The first thing I should probably do is contact my agent, right? And start looking at a different commercial policy versus my homeowner's policy.
Absolutely. Call your agent, walk through the coverages, tell them specifically what you're using this property for. And there's a lot of different statuses, but every occupancy status is a different risk, and therefore a different premium. And if they're not correct, it could lead to the same end outcome if they're not correct on a claims payout.
Okay. So, what about the investors that own vacation rentals and reside in them part-time?
I mean, it's similar, right? I mean, just like we said, it is it's a status change potentially, right? So if it is part-time, you could have additional liability needs. Again, I think the first step in that is be honest and open with your agent. Ask them how should we structure this. There's many ways to do it, but as long as you're starting there, getting advice from an expert and moving forward in that direction, I think is the best way to go. And also, sometimes homeowners policies just flat exclude short-term rentals altogether.
Yeah. So outside of being covered correctly, are there any additional benefits to insuring your property under a commercial policy?
Yeah, for sure. One thing that jumps to mind is like additional living expenses or loss of use, I guess is kind of the high level word. But I'll give you an example. So you own a house, it's your own property, you have a claim, let's say the kitchen burns down and your house is not livable. Couple things that are going to cost you money are, I can't live in my house, first of all, and I can't make dinner in my kitchen, second of all. Both of those things would be covered in a traditional homeowner's policy under loss of use. Conversely, thinking through the commercial side, and say it's a rental property, same thing happens. Well, there's not going to be any loss of use for you because you don't live there, but you're going to lose the renter, which means you're going to lose income, right? So those are the main differences from that perspective that you really got to think. They're totally different things. If you don't have it right, you're not going to be paid correctly or be paid at all. There's some other things too, like vacant properties. It's important. Again, the risk is high with vacant properties. I mean, did you maintain your heat? That's one thing that you can't do if you're not there. It's more difficult to do. Increases the risk. What if your pipe breaks and you have a leak and you don't even know it because it's vacant? It could go on for a long time, cause a lot more damage. Carriers know this. They know the risk is higher. So you just have to be cognizant of those things and how your policy covers those things. And then I guess the last thing to me is, many homeowners policies won't even let you add more than, like, as an investor, more than 5 locations. We can do almost as much as you want. I mean, hundreds. If that's how you want it to do it, and you want it in one place, INREG does that for you under the commercial side.
Okay. Yeah. That is great information. So now let's move into our game.
I'm ready.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So we're going to play a game, fact or fiction. We'll share some landlord statistics from Flex,
Okay.
and you're going to tell us if you think they are true or not.
I'm ready. Let's
All
do
right.
it.
First one. Fact or fiction? The average landlord has 3 properties.
I'm going to guess there's a lot of people that have one, and there's probably a lot of people that have hundreds, but that sounds like a pretty good average, so I'll say fact.
That is correct. It is a fact. And that's about the average that we see in our program at Insuring.
Yeah, I didn't even know that.
Yes. Okay. Fact or fiction? Mom and pop landlords own 10 million rental units in the U.S.
That is a flip of a coin for me. I'm just going to say fiction.
That is fiction because they own 20.5 million, which is approximately 41% of all rental units.
I would not have known that.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Yeah.
Good for mom and pop.
Yeah, for sure.
Fact or fiction, 10.6 million Americans earn income from rental properties.
That is a stat I've never looked into, Brooke. I'm just going to say fact.
That is a fact. Well, and you're one of them, right?
I am.
Yeah.
I increased it by 1.
Yes. Fact or fiction, 30% of properties experience some form of vacancy every year.
I would say that's true.
That is true, but it's Oh, I'm sorry. It's false.
It is
it's
false.
Fiction. It's actually 41%.
Yeah.
So 41% of properties experience some. Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot. It's more
That
than
is a
thought.
lot.
Yeah.
Last one.
Learn something new every day.
Yes, you do. It's a nice little stat to have in your back pocket.
That's right. I'm writing it down.
For a dinner party. Fact or fiction? Half of single property landlords purchase the property as a primary residence first.
I'd say that's true. That's what I did. Wasn't planned, but I feel like that probably happens a lot. Yeah.
That is true. So have you now insured your property correctly?
I have since sold it. I was very happy to sell it. And it's great being a landlord. I was not that person that wanted to do that. I had to do it because I didn't have a choice, and it was a very good day when I got rid of it. So,
Good. Yeah. Well, a lot of great information for our viewers. People, make sure that if you have investment properties, you cover it correctly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
Good talk.
Thank you for being on.
Absolutely. Anytime.
We'll continue to post new episodes every other Wednesday on NREIG's YouTube channel, that's NREIG, and on Spotify and Apple Podcasts at Insured Investors.